Hello, my dears. Thank you for listening as I share something that's been weighing on my heart for months now. Let me know in the comments where you're from and what time it is where you are. I love connecting with all of you. If you haven't already, please subscribe. It means more to me than you know. And if you have a story to share, my email is in the description below. Today, I want to tell you about the day I realized I had become invisible. Not physically, mind you, I was still here, still breathing, still very much alive. But invisible in the way that matters most, to the people who were supposed to love me. My name is Eleanor Walsh, and I'm 73 years old. I've been a widow for 8 years now, since my beloved Thomas passed from cancer. We had 3 children together, Michael, Sarah, and Jonathan. I thought I knew them. I thought I mattered to them. I was wrong. It started with small things that I told myself were normal. Phone calls that became shorter and less frequent. Michael used to call every Sunday to chat about his week, ask about mine, share stories about his teenagers. Those calls dwindled to quick check-ins. How are you feeling, Mom? Everything okay? Good, good. I'll call you soon. Click. Sarah lived just across the street from me, close enough that I could see her kitchen window from mine. We used to have coffee together every Tuesday morning, sitting at my kitchen table, talking about everything and nothing. Those coffee dates became monthly, then occasional, then non-existent. When I'd see her in the yard, she'd wave and call out, "We should get together soon," but soon never came. Jonathan, my youngest, had always been the most attentive. He lived 3 hours away, but made an effort to visit regularly. Those visits started feeling different, though. Instead of settling in for the afternoon, catching up, sharing a meal, he'd arrive with a mental checklist. Check the smoke detector batteries. Look at the stairs for safety hazards. Ask pointed questions about my medications, my driving, my memory. Then he'd leave, duty fulfilled. I told myself this was normal. Children grow up, they get busy, they have their own lives, their own problems. I didn't want to be the clingy mother, the burden, the elderly parent who demanded attention. So I adapted. I learned to be grateful for scraps. A 10-minute phone call once a week. A rushed visit on my birthday, where they'd glance at their watches and mention traffic. Being included in family photos, but not family conversations. I started measuring my worth by how little trouble I caused them. I stopped calling unless it was truly important. I stopped asking for help with things I could struggle through alone. I stopped mentioning when I felt lonely, or when my arthritis was particularly bad, or when the house felt too quiet and too big for just me. I became smaller and smaller in my own life, hoping that by taking up less space, by needing less, by being less of a bother, they would love me more. Instead, I think I just made it easier for them to forget I existed. The breaking point came 3 months ago, on what I now call the day of the family meeting I wasn't invited to. I found out about it by accident. I was at the grocery store, struggling with a cart that had a wobbly wheel. Arthritis makes simple tasks harder, but I manage, when I heard a familiar voice in the next aisle. Sarah was on her phone, using that hushed, urgent tone that makes you lean in closer. "We can't keep putting this off," she was saying. "Mom's getting worse. Did you see how she couldn't find her keys last week, when I stopped by?" And Michael said she seemed confused about what day it was when he called. She thought it was Wednesday, but it was Thursday. My blood went cold. I stood there, frozen between the canned goods and the pasta sauce, clutching the handle of my cart so tightly my knuckles went white. "I know it's hard," she continued, "but we need to make decisions for her own good. She's not going to like it, but someone has to be the adult here. The 3 of us need to sit down this weekend and figure out what to do." Maybe it's time to start looking at places. You know, nice places, where she'd be safe and they could monitor her. Places. As in, places to put me. Places to store me away from the inconvenience of my existence. No, she can't know we're meeting about this, Sarah said, lowering her voice even further. She'll just get upset and stubborn, and then we'll never get anywhere. We need to present her with a plan, not ask her opinion. She's not thinking clearly anymore. I abandoned my cart right there in aisle 7 and left the store, my hands shaking so badly I could barely get my keys into the car door. I drove home in a daze, replaying every recent interaction, every concerned look, every "Are you okay, Mom?" that I had dismissed as normal care. They weren't caring. They were documenting. Building a case. Every forgotten word, every moment of confusion, every sign of normal human aging was being catalogued as evidence of my declining competence. That weekend, I watched from my living room window as all 3 of my children gathered at Sarah's house across the street. Yes, across the street. She lived close enough to see my front door, close enough to check on me daily if she wanted to, but far enough to have secret meetings about my future without me noticing. I watched them arrive within minutes of each other, clearly coordinated. I watched Michael's sedan pull up first, then Jonathan's truck. I saw the lights go on in Sarah's kitchen, where I imagined them sitting around the table I had given her as a wedding gift, discussing my mental capacity over coffee and the pastries she never had time to share with me anymore. They were there for 3 hours. 3 hours to dismantle my autonomy, my dignity, my right to live my own life. 3 hours to decide my fate without consulting me. I sat in my darkened living room, curtains drawn, watching my children plot my future like I was already gone. And in a way, I realized, I already was. I had become a problem to be solved, not a person to be loved. When they finally left, I remained in that chair until the sun came up, processing the devastating truth. Somewhere along the way, I had stopped being their mother and become their burden. The next few weeks were torture. Every interaction was filtered through this new knowledge. When Michael visited the following Sunday and casually asked if I was taking my medications properly, I heard, "Is she competent to manage her own health?" When Jonathan called and asked how I was managing the house, if anything needed repair, I heard, "Is she safe to live alone?" When Sarah offered to take me grocery shopping, saying it would be fun, like old times, I heard, "Can she handle basic tasks?" They weren't seeing me anymore. They were seeing a collection of potential problems, deficits to be managed, risks to be mitigated. Every normal sign of aging, moving a little slower, needing reading glasses, occasionally forgetting a name, was being interpreted as evidence of decline. But here's what they weren't seeing: I was still me. Yes, I sometimes misplaced my keys, doesn't everyone? Yes, I occasionally mixed up what day it was. When you're retired and every day blends together, that's normal. Yes, I moved a little slower, got tired a little easier, needed more time to process information. But my mind was sharp. My judgment was sound. My heart was full. My spirit was unbroken. I was not declining. I was aging. There's a difference, though apparently not to them. The final insult came 2 weeks later, when I overheard Sarah on the phone again, this time in my own house, during one of her check-in visits. She was in the kitchen making tea, and I was in the bathroom, and the acoustics in this old house carried her voice perfectly. "The realtor says the house could sell quickly in this market," she was saying. "It's got good bones, nice neighborhood. Mom doesn't need all this space anyway. What's she going to do with 4 bedrooms and a basement? Once we get her settled somewhere appropriate, we can handle everything. Split the proceeds 3 ways and use her portion for whatever facility we choose." My house. The house Thomas and I bought as newlyweds with our life savings. The house where I raised 3 children, hosted countless holidays, nursed them through fevers and heartbreaks, taught them to ride bikes in the driveway, and helped with homework at the kitchen table. The house where I had created a lifetime of memories, where every room held pieces of my soul. They were already planning to sell it, probably split the proceeds 3 ways, with me warehoused somewhere safe and appropriate for my needs. I sat on the edge of my bathtub and wept. Not just from sadness, but from rage. Pure, clean rage that felt like fire in my chest. How dare they? How dare they decide I was incapable without even asking me how I felt? How dare they plan to sell my home without consulting me? How dare they treat me like I was already dead? That night, I made a decision. If they wanted to treat me like I was invisible, I would show them what invisible really looked like. I stopped answering their calls. When Michael called with his weekly check-in, I let it go to voicemail. When Sarah knocked on my door the next Tuesday, suggesting we catch up, I pretended not to be home. When Jonathan called to tell me about his daughter's soccer game, I didn't pick up. For 2 weeks, I gave them exactly what they seemed to want. A mother who didn't require their attention, their fake concern, their patronizing care. The panic set in quickly. By day 3, Sarah was knocking on my door every morning before work. By day 5, she was leaving notes, "Mom, please call me. I'm worried." By day 7, Michael was calling my neighbors, asking if they'd seen me. By day 10, Jonathan was driving the 3 hours from his house to mine, pounding on the door and threatening to call the police for a wellness check. I watched it all from my bedroom window upstairs, these 3 middle-aged adults scrambling around my property, frantic with worry about the mother they had been systematically erasing from their lives. The irony was not lost on me. On day 14, they were all on my front porch at the same time, talking loudly about calling a locksmith, when I finally opened the door. "Mom!" Sarah gasped, pushing past me into the hallway. "We've been so worried. Why haven't you been answering? Are you okay? Are you hurt? We thought something terrible had happened." I looked at the 3 of them, my children, now middle-aged adults with mortgages and teenagers, and busy lives that somehow made me the least important thing in their world, and I said the words I should have said months ago. "I'm fine. I've just been giving you what you want." "What do you mean?" Michael asked, genuine confusion on his face. "I know about the meetings, Michael. I know about your plans. I know you've been discussing my competence, my future, my house. I know you think I'm no longer capable of making my own decisions. So I've been giving you what you want, a mother who doesn't bother you anymore." The silence that followed was deafening. I could see the wheels turning in their heads, the realization dawning that I knew more than they thought I did. "Mom, we just want what's best for you," Michael started, his voice taking on that careful, talking to a child tone I had grown to hate. "No," I said firmly. "You want what's easiest for you. There's a difference." I invited them in not because I forgave them, but because this conversation needed to happen on my turf, in my house, surrounded by the life they were so eager to dismantle. We sat in my living room, and for the first time in years, I was not the accommodating mother. I was not the understanding grandmother, who smiled and nodded and made everything easy for everyone else. I was a woman demanding to be seen. "I heard you at the grocery store, Sarah," I began. "I heard you say I was getting worse, that I seemed confused. I heard you planning a meeting about my future. I heard you say I couldn't know about it because I'd get upset and stubborn." Sarah's face went white. "Mom, I'm not finished." My voice was steady, strong. "I heard you on the phone in my own kitchen, talking about selling my house." "My house, Sarah. The house your father and I built our life in. The house where you took your first steps, where we celebrated every birthday and Christmas, where I nursed you through chicken pox and teenage heartbreak. Jonathan shifted uncomfortably. Mom, we were just planning my life without me. I know. I stood up and walked to the mantelpiece, where photos of our family covered every inch of space. Photos of birthday parties I had hosted, holidays I had orchestrated, moments I had created and preserved and treasured. Let me tell you what you see when you look at me, I continued, my back still to them. You see an old woman who moves too slowly, who forgets things, who might fall down the stairs, or leave the stove on or get confused about what day it is. You see a liability. A responsibility. A problem to be solved before it becomes a crisis. I turned back to face them. But that's not who I am. I am 73 years old. I have lived through the deaths of my parents, my husband, and 3 of my closest friends. I have survived cancer, a heart attack, and the kind of grief that makes you want to stop breathing. I have raised 3 children, worked for 30 years as a nurse, and managed this household for 5 decades. My voice grew stronger with each word. I balance my own checkbook. I manage my own medications. I maintain my own home. I drive myself to appointments, cook my own meals, and make my own decisions every single day. I am not declining. I am not incompetent. I am not a problem to be solved. But Mom, Jonathan said gently, we're just trying to plan ahead. We want to make sure you're safe. Safe from what? Living my own life. Making my own choices. The great danger of being old in my own home. I sat back down, facing them directly. You want to know what's not safe? What's not safe is being erased by the people who are supposed to love you most. What's not safe is having your competence questioned every time you move slowly or forget a name. What's not safe is living in fear that your own children are plotting to take away everything you've worked for, because they think old age makes you incapable. Michael leaned forward, his expression troubled. Mom, we're not plotting. We're concerned. Then why the secret meetings? Why the whispered phone calls? Why the conversations about selling my house and putting me in a facility that don't include me? None of them had an answer for that. I'll tell you why, I said. Because somewhere along the way, you stopped seeing me as your mother and started seeing me as your future burden. You've been so busy preparing for me to become incompetent that you've forgotten I'm not there yet. You've been so focused on managing my decline that you've missed the fact that I'm still living. The conversation that followed was the most honest one we'd had in years. They admitted they were scared of losing me, scared of making the wrong decisions, scared of being responsible for my care as I aged. They admitted they felt overwhelmed by the thought of managing my needs alongside their own busy lives. But they also admitted something else that cut deep. They had stopped seeing me as a person and started seeing me as a future problem. They had been so focused on what I might become that they had forgotten who I still was. I'm not your problem to solve, I told them. I'm your mother. And until the day comes when I truly cannot make my own decisions, the day that may never come, I expect to be included in any conversation about my life. We talked for hours after that. Real talking, not the surface-level chatter that had become our norm. They asked questions they should have asked months ago. How was I really feeling? What did I want for my future? What kind of help did I actually need versus what they assumed I needed? I told them the truth. I was lonely. Not because I couldn't take care of myself, but because they had all pulled away. I missed being part of their lives, not as an obligation, but as a person they genuinely wanted to spend time with. I missed being asked for advice instead of being treated like I had nothing valuable to contribute. I missed being included in family decisions, instead of being protected from them like a child. I don't need to be managed, I said. I need to be loved. There's a difference. That was 3 months ago. Things have changed, slowly but surely. They still worry, that's what children do, even when they are middle-aged. But now they talk to me about their concerns instead of around me. They ask my opinion before making assumptions about my capabilities. They include me in family discussions about the future, instead of making decisions for me. Most importantly, they see me again. Not as a problem to be solved or a risk to be managed, but as Eleanor Walsh, mother, grandmother, woman, survivor, and someone who still has plenty of living to do. Sarah and I have our Tuesday morning coffees again. Michael's Sunday calls have returned to actual conversations, instead of wellness checks. Jonathan visits not to inspect my home for hazards, but to spend time with me because he wants to, not because he feels obligated. I'm sharing this story because I know I'm not alone. I know there are others out there who have felt the sharp pain of becoming invisible to the people who matter most. I want you to know that you are not a burden. You are not a problem. You are not less valuable because you are older. Age is not a disease. It's an achievement. Every year you've lived is a year of experience, wisdom, joy, and survival. Every wrinkle tells a story. Every gray hair represents a battle won. Every slower step is proof that you're still walking your own path. To my fellow elders who might be watching, you have a voice. Use it. You have value. Claim it. You have rights. Defend them. Don't let anyone, not even your own children, convince you that age makes you invisible. And to the younger generations who might be watching, please remember that the elderly people in your life are not problems waiting to happen. They are not burdens to be managed or risks to be mitigated. They are people with feelings, opinions, desires, and dignity. They deserve to be included in conversations about their own lives. They deserve to be treated with respect, not just care. Love is not just about keeping someone safe. Love is about keeping someone seen. I am Eleanor Walsh. I am 73 years old. I am visible. I am valuable. I am not going anywhere. And neither should you. Thank you for listening, my dears. Until next time, remember, growing old is a privilege denied to many. Wear your age with pride, speak with your voice, and never let anyone make you feel invisible. You matter. At any age, you matter.